navigate. And it's my honor to welcome you guys tonight to celebrate 4 incredibly special women. Not only are we celebrating 4 amazing women, but we had 4 other amazing women tell their stories via the choreography you're going to see today. So you're going to see the stories of Christine, Maritza, Lisa, and Charity, and their stories were created by Rachel, Silvita, make sure I get this in the right order, Jasmine, and Jenny. And you can read more in your program about all 8 of these women, and one of the coolest things about these stories is that they're all based in Chicago to some degree. They all have strong ties to the city, and I love to say that I feel very much that some of the women that you never hear about are the backbone of the city that we live in. And I think that's very true, and if you look to your right and left, you probably see some Chicagoland ladies sitting here. And they are represented by what you're going to see today. So if you will, imagine in your mind a globe that you've seen probably many times before, PBS, National Geographic, my favorite channel, right? Imagine that beautiful blue and green ball that we call Earth. And then I just invite you to slowly zoom in on North America, and then on the US, and then on Illinois, and then Chicago. And from there, we're going to take a journey to the front porch, or the living room, or the backyard of 4 incredibly special women as they do what has been done throughout history, and that is to gather with their friends and their community members to share wisdom, to share resilience, to share what it truly means to love, to sacrifice, and to overcome. So thank you so much for being with us tonight for this incredible finale of the BIOS project. We're so honored to be telling these stories and to have you all with us to share in that. Our art really doesn't mean much without you, so thank you for being here, and please enjoy the show.
Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. future generations to remember that everything they have is the result of someone else's sacrifice from generations past. Even if the younger generations don't speak the native language, I hope they are curious enough and grateful enough to want to know and connect with their culture. There is so much to learn and to appreciate. I really hope the younger generations will avail themselves to learn and to embrace what is already theirs and not resent. We have to choose to be resilient and choose to never give up. Through it all, we can remain hopeful and confident because we know that God is directing our path. When we encounter hard times, we can lean into Him and to each other. We gather our strength from God so we can support one another and not give up. This is my picture of hope. It does not fade. It only gets more vibrant and more beautiful with time. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace.
So the words you heard in that last piece were spoken by Lisa, who was an immigrant from Hong Kong. She came here to the US when she was just 9 years old. And when we were interviewing her, we found out that she actually had a really hard time learning English, and so mostly did not speak for the first 2 years she lived here. So her story was really compelling and beautiful, and the way that she told it, just really moved, I think, every single person who heard it. And then the way that Jasmine took some of that interview and wove it into the music for the piece was just so compelling. And I get chills every time I listen to Lisa kind of talk about where her hope comes from and how she kind of had to navigate through some really difficult times. And each of the 4 women had similar moments where they shared with us just some really beautiful and important life lessons, and I personally feel much richer for having met and talked to each one of them. I know Christine's story from the very beginning, you saw a lot of just difficult trauma that she went through, and if you read her story in the program, her story involves a lot of loss. If you stick around for the talk back, we'll talk more about that. But the way she's been resilient throughout that, after losing so much, and the way that she's overcome thing after thing, gives me hope in the midst of some really hard things in my own life. And then the second story, where we saw Maritza and just the joy, the family, the beauty of sitting around the kitchen table, right? That big spotlight in the middle, and sitting there and enjoying their time. Maritza is an Afro-Latina, and so she has multiple different influences in her background, and she describes it as caldo, which is soup, right? This big mixture of everything. She talks a lot about not being just one part or being segmented into different parts of her person, but being one whole. And then this last piece you're about to see is about a beautiful woman named Charity, and her story is also one that involves a lot of pain, but what she has brought out of that pain is nothing short of extraordinary. And I don't want to give away too much, spoiler alert, but she now actually works with women who have gone through some of the same trials and difficulties that she has experienced. And so every time I watch her piece, I am so filled with awe in how, even though we go through some really hard things in life, if we allow it, God can take those things and use them to change lives and to bless other people. So those are some of the lessons that I've learned from these amazing women, and I hope you guys enjoy our final piece as we bring you Charity, choreographed by Jenny Richards.
Thank you.